I'd like to welcome you here. I'm Judy Blachek. I'm president of the Friends of the Nashua Public Library, and today is our second Beyond the Book event. We're pleased to bring you the author of this year's Nashua Reads selection. And just so you know it, today's program is being taped for our local educational television station, Channel 99, which can be found by anyone who has Comcast cable in Nashua. Before we turn to the main event, I'd like to take care of a few details. First of all, I'd like to welcome Mayor Donnelly Lozo. Mayor, thank you. Mayor, thank you for supporting our program to encourage the citizens of Nashua to participate in this common literary experience. And she has the book in her hand, so she's one of us. I'd like to thank the TD Charitable Foundation for their financial support of today's program. And I'd also like to thank Rivier College for their generosity in making the use of this wonderful facility affordable for us. And of course, we want to thank our local independent bookstore, Toadstool. Yay, Toadstool! I hope you patronize them. I'd also like to thank the committee, which is led by Carol Barker, and her core team of Lisa Allen, Carol Iman, and Marjorie Morse for their hard work in making this such a special and great day. And of course, we want to extend our appreciation to the army of volunteers who are here today to help run the event. So I'd like to ask, how many of you came last year to the Chris Bajalian event? So thank you, and that's nice to know that we're doing something right. We're going to run today's event pretty much like we did last year's, which is Ms. Berg will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have, which will include a reading, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for question and answer. And at that point, we'll give out the door prize and the book club raffle winner. If you're in a book club and you're here and you haven't gotten a little ticket, see an usher and they'll help you out today. And also, we did put an evaluation form on each seat. If you could fill that out, that would really help us to plan future events. We'd appreciate that. And at the end, you can get your book signed, and we ask that you wait, and the ushers will instruct each row when they can go, and we're going to try to really maximize Ms. Berg's limited time. And now I'd like to introduce Ms. Berg. Elizabeth Berg has been on the New York Times bestseller list multiple times. She's written 22 books and is currently hard at work finalizing her newest book. Two of her books, Durable Goods and Joy School, were both selected as American Library Association Best Book of the Year. Open House was an Oprah's Book Club selection, and in 1997, Elizabeth won the New England Booksellers Award for her body of work. She was made a literary light by the Boston Public Library and was given the AMC Cancer Research Center's Illuminator Award for shedding light on breast cancer, resulting in an increased public awareness and concern. Elizabeth has a superb website that I hope you will visit. It has her personal or professional details, but includes other things like pictures of her grandchildren and recipes. In addition, she has a blog, which is a really fun read, and it brought two people here today, so I'm really happy about that. In her description of herself on the site, Elizabeth says, "She was a dramatic and dreamy child, given to living more inside my head than outside. Something that persists up to today and makes me a terrible dining partner." Well, I'm here to tell you that I was her dining partner last night, and she has that part all wrong. I'm sure she'll prove me right and will leave you all as delighted as I was last night. I welcome Elizabeth Berg.
Thank you very much. That was such a witty and well-spoken introduction. I feel I can't compete. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you later. We really did have a good time last night, and unbeknownst to these women, I'm having all my things delivered up here so that I can move in with them and sort of rotate so that they won't get tired of me. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you all so much for coming out on an exceptionally beautiful day. and especially at this time of year. I know that there's a lot of work that goes into planning these things, and then I just come up here and get treated like the Queen of Sheba, and I don't see all that happens behind the scenes, but I'm deeply appreciative of it. I'm particularly appreciative of the fact that somebody said, I know, let's do this when it's peak foliage season. You get a call and say, do you want to go to New England in October? You say, yes I do. So we were all on the airplane craning our necks to see the leaves. They're just so heartbreakingly beautiful. And I've seen beautiful trees and I've met beautiful people. It's just been such a pleasure. So I thought the way that I would do this is I would talk a little bit and then read a little bit and then take questions. I'm very interested in the questions part because it seems to me that when a lot of people read or at least hear about a book, there can be a lot of questions, and I'm happy to answer those. Also recipe questions, bring them on, I'll just be happy to answer them. So much is made of the fact that writers have imaginations that lead them to write books. I think one of the most wonderful things about reading books, though, is that it's an interactive art form, which is to say that the reader contributes his or her own imagination to reading the book, so that the characters you imagine don't look necessarily like the characters in the author's mind. I have a visual image of Paige Dunn, of her daughter Diana, of their caregiver PC. I know exactly what they look like. And if you and I were to be able to create our images of those characters, I bet they would not look alike. So I love that about reading. And I'd like to ask you to call upon your own imagination in trying to think of what the real mother, whose name was Pat Raming, who inspired this book. She inspired the character of Paige Dunn. Imagine her life. This is the real woman now. She was, I don't know if she knew her parents. She was adopted. And at age 5, both her parents died. And she was bounced around from foster home to foster home to foster home. She got married relatively young. She had a 3-year-old child, a 2-year-old child, and was 9 months pregnant with her 3rd child when she got polio. Additionally, she was on her way to nursing school. That's what she was going to do. She got flu-like symptoms, which is characteristic of the disease, and soon, within 24 hours, had difficulty breathing, was brought to the hospital, diagnosed with polio, put into an iron lung because her respirations began failing. She was having trouble breathing, so she was put into an iron lung. The baby was born in the iron lung, Marianne, little Marianne, baby girl. They didn't think, the doctors, that is to say, didn't think that the mother or the baby would survive, and funeral arrangements, in fact, had been made for both of them. It was thought to be a medical miracle that they both survived, especially the baby, but survive she did. And it was she who went on to send me a letter many years later asking me if I would write her mother's life story. But let's keep our focus on Pat for a moment. She stayed in the iron lung, and probably most, or if not all of you, have seen pictures of iron lungs, so you have some idea of what they look like. I will have at the book signing table some photos of Pat in her iron lung that you can look at if you want to. But when you imagine those pictures or see them today, imagine being in there for 3 years. It's extraordinary. Pat came home after 3 years. She had a portable ventilator. She had what was called a rocking bed. It went up and down and used the forces of gravity to help her breathe. And that's how Marianne met her mother for the first time, really. Although she'd been brought to the hospital to visit a little, the time that she really met her and spent time with her was on that rocking bed. And Marianne loved that rocking bed. She thought it was very soothing, and so it was a pleasant association for her, first meeting her mother. Her husband stuck around for about a year, I should say that when Pat was in the hospital, the kids were farmed out to relatives. He did not take care of their children when she was in the hospital. When she came back, he stuck around for about a year and could not hack it. He said, I can't do this. And he very generously offered to adopt out their 3 children. And she said, over my dead body. And she got a house in LA, and she found caretakers, and she relied upon those caretakers and upon neighbors to help her out. After the children got older, they themselves began taking care of their mother. Now, all this time, Marianne thought her mother was swell. She was a loving, intelligent, articulate woman. She taught Marianne how to play Scrabble. They played Scrabble games together. She insisted upon going out, and in those days it was very difficult for handicapped people to find a place to park. She also needed a place to plug herself in so her ventilator would work. She was capable of breathing on her own up to 2 hours, doing something that was called frog breathing, which amounted to a kind of swallowing air. But after that, she really needed electricity. So as you can imagine, it was really terrifying when the power went out. She had a backup battery, but even so, it was pretty terrifying. But she loved her mother. And then it began to occur to her as she got older that they lived a very different life from most people. And when she hit adolescence, she was furious at her mother. She couldn't join clubs, do after-school activities. As the youngest child, she was the only one left after a while, and so much of the responsibility for her mother's care fell to her. And she was angry about it. She hated it. She was embarrassed. She wanted to be like all the other kids, as teenagers do. Then she grew up some more. She left the house. Pat had a caretaker coming in again, and Pat asked the state to help her go back to school. She wanted to do something besides sit around and watch soap operas, as she called it. She wanted to become a counselor. So she went back to school. She had an attendant who went with her. She took notes holding a pencil in her mouth, something that she learned to do in the hospital, and there's a photo of that too that you can see if you want. And she got her degree, and she became a substance abuse counselor. She died at age 55 from a respiratory infection after having lived with polio for 35 years, when it was predicted that she would never live longer than 20 years. So now imagine that you're Marianne Berg, her daughter, and you are, what was she, in her early 50s, late 40s maybe, and you're thinking and you're thinking and thinking about your life experience, about your mother in particular, and what that life must have been like for her, because finally, as we grow older, we're able to shift the focus from ourselves a little bit. And she realized the gifts she'd been given by a mother who was so mightily compromised. And she would tell her life story to people, and they would always say the same thing. What would they say? Can you guess? You should write a book. Exactly. So, what a smart crowd. So she wanted there to be a book. She did not want to write it. She just didn't think that she was a writer, but she really wanted this book written. She wanted that kind of tribute to her mother. So a friend of hers had given her one of my books, and that's how she became acquainted with me. I have to say, incidentally, I always love hearing different stories about how people came across my books, and this is my new favorite, because someone here today said, I found you in the supermarket. They have a drop a book off, pick one. I love that story. And she said, then I go back and I look, B. Oh, there's another one. And she says, and they're always in good shape, too, you know. And I think, well, didn't that person even read it before they turned it in? But never mind. So Pat had been told about my books by a friend, and she started reading me, and she really liked my books. So she sent me a letter, a copy of which I will also have out on the table. And it began, I don't know if you ever do this kind of thing. And I thought, no, I don't ever do this kind of thing. Whatever it is you're going to say, I'm going to tell you right now, no, I don't. Okay, next letter. But I read her letter, and it was interesting, because she told me a little bit about the circumstances of her life. But that did not compel me to get in touch with her. What did was a photograph she sent, which was of her as a little girl. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know how many of you can see it now, but I will have it at the table. But here's Marianne, this little girl wearing her pedal pushers, standing behind her mother, who is this beautiful young woman wearing her portable ventilator. It looks kind of like a turtle shell. And I could not stop looking at this photograph. What struck me about it was the absence of any sense of self-pity or shame or sorrow on either of those faces. And I thought, what's inside a person that can make them be so okay after something like that has happened? You're 22 years old. You're pregnant with your third child. You get polio. You can move nothing but your head. That's it for the rest of your life. What makes you keep on? Not only keep on, but be so fine about it. So I just kept looking at it, and finally I called Marianne, and she was in a bad mood that night because she was trying to spend some time with her husband, and she figured I was a sales call. So when she answered the phone, she was really crabby. And I said, this is Elizabeth Berg, because I was a little scared because, you know. And she said, oh my God. So anyway, I said, listen, you know, I got this letter, and I think this is a fascinating story, and I think you should write it. And she said, I'm not a writer. I don't want to write it. I want someone else to write it. And I said, well, in that case, you should find a ghostwriter, or you should find someone who's a really good nonfiction writer who can help you or do it for you, because I'm a novelist. I couldn't write your mother's true life story. And she said, you're my favorite writer. I want you to do it. And I said, okay. So I told her that I needed to rely on her. I told her the story I tell will be a tribute to your mother's spirit, but it won't be your mother's life. You need to be okay with that. I'm going to make something up, and I don't know what I'm going to make up, because that's the way I write. I take a free fall into the imagination, and I see what happens. She said, I'm fine with that. So what we did was to strike up a kind of email correspondence. I did not want to talk to her on the phone about any details, because I didn't want to be swayed by her tone of voice or by anything she said in any way. I just wanted the facts, ma'am. So I would send her emails. And we talked about lots of different technical things. What is frog breathing really, and how do you do it? What did that ventilator look like? What did it sound like? What were your mother's favorite foods? What did she love in her life? What did she like to do? What did she and her friends talk about? And one time, the answers were usually, you know, question, answer, done. But one time we started talking about pies, and that was a long discussion that Marianne and I had, very little of which made its way into the book, but a very satisfying discussion nonetheless. So when I finished the book, I turned it in, and I started writing it, and you know, let's back up a little. I started writing it, and I wrote the prologue and found that for some reason it was set in Tupelo, Mississippi. I had no idea why I was setting it in Tupelo, Mississippi. Most of my books are set in places I am living or have lived. And then it occurred to me that this was a great place to set it, because it takes place in 1964. I wanted to write a book about a mother who's compromised this way, who has a teenage daughter, because what a combo, right? 1964, Freedom Summer, and freedom riders were all over the South setting up community centers, freedom schools, trying to register blacks to vote. It was a time, as you know, of great unrest and danger and risk and horrible crimes and so on. And it was kind of perfect in a way, because it made me look at what freedom really means, whether you're an individual or a group of people. and who's really free and who's really not. And there's a point in the book at which Paige tells her daughter that she, in her state, although she can move nothing but her head, is freer than PC, who's the black caregiver, who is kind of a surrogate sister and mother. So it seemed right. They're all struggling with issues of freedom in a way. PC and her boyfriend LaRue, and Paige Dunn, struggling with freedom, and also Diana, struggling in the way that every adolescent does to be free, and also, particularly in her case, to escape a poverty-filled life. So you put those three elements together, and that's what I came up with, is this book. So I finished it, I sent it into my editor, we got it all ready. You know, before a book comes out, a galley comes out. It's called a galley, it looks like a paperback book, and that's the last incarnation of a book before it becomes a hardback. And Marianne had been asking to read it, naturally, and I was a little nervous about her reading it. And so I kept telling her the date that the hardback would be coming out. The hardback will be right along. Well, she got wind of the galley, and she got sent a galley, and she read it. And she called me, and I was not home when she called me, and I came back to a message that said, Elizabeth? And then she began to cry, in the good way, in the good way. And she was perfectly happy. I thought, oh, thank God. She was perfectly happy. She is a reservation specialist for American Airlines. She came to my house for the weekend. We made enchiladas. We talked a lot. We went to a book party for someone else. And someone spilled a drink. And didn't Marianne, who knew no one, didn't she hustle over and clean it right up? And she says about herself, I'm just a take charge kind of girl. I see something that needs to be done and I do it. And that's because of her background. She's a really exceptional individual, and it was a pleasure and a privilege to work with her and to meet her. So I know that most of you here have read this book, or maybe most of you here have read this book. I also know that some of you have been dragged along, dragged into this room, probably with the promise that after this we'll do something really fun. So for those of you who are dragged here and have no idea what this book is about, and also for those of you who have read it and might like to hear how it sounds in the author's voice, I'm going to do a brief reading, and then we will proceed to Q&A. In 1951, when she was 22 years old and 9 months pregnant with me, my mother contracted polio and was for a time put into an iron lung. I was born there, my dubious claim to fame, pulled out through a bedpan portal, alive and howling, much to the amazement of the doctor who had prepared death certificates in advance for both me and my mother. No woman had ever delivered inside a lung, but my mother had been too ill to be taken out of it. As soon as she saw me, wrapped in a white hospital blanket, my hand, my mother insisted, reaching toward her, she rose to joy. Not so for my father, who left when he learned my mother would not fully recover, that her only progress would be to move to a portable respirator. On his last visit to my mother, he told her that he would take care of getting me adopted out. My mother refused. She made arrangements to rent a house and hire a caretaker for me, and then she stayed in the lung for 3 years, driven to survive, so that she could come home and raise her daughter as well as any other mother, or better. She and I lived in a 2-bedroom mill house just north of downtown Tupelo, Mississippi. You know the town, Elvis's birthplace. He had a kind of great luck and then terrible tragedy. For us, it was the opposite. And this little part coming next will introduce you to the voice of PC, who's the caretaker. PC came about because I was lying in bed one night when I do my best thinking when I'm horizontal. Either that or the shower, which I think is a scalp stimulation kind of thing. Anyway, And I saw this woman walking down the sidewalk, and I knew that's her caretaker, and her name is P.C., which I'd never heard before. I don't even know if it's a name. But I saw her so clearly. She was swinging her big purse. I saw what she had on. I saw that she was wearing men's shoes and white socks. Anyway, it was such a vivid picture. I had to get up out of bed and write it down. But it's okay. So in this scene, Diana has come out of her house in the early morning and gone under the porch where she is going to have an office under the porch there because it's private and she doesn't get much privacy. She's not supposed to go out of the house when there's no caretaker there. So she sees PC coming and she's really nervous because if she gets caught, she's going to be in trouble. So she stays under the porch thinking that she'll sneak in later. After a while, I heard the screen door squeak open and then PC saying, "Didn't I tell you get out from under there?" I stayed silent. "Diana?" I held my breath. "I know you there and I'm telling you for the last time, get out." She waited, then played her trump card. "And beside that, your mama want you." I scrambled out from under the porch and pushed past PC. "It's your mama wants you," I said, "and it's besides." "Says who?" PC asked. "Says me." "That ain't nobody," she said. "Wash your hands now. We're fixing to eat breakfast. You probably got the ringworm playing in the dirt like a dog. And no shoes as per usual. You wash up good. I made biscuits, and my sister sent strawberry jam to eat with them." "I want sausage gravy with them," I said. She stared at me. "You best wash out your ears, too. I didn't hear anybody say anything about sausage gravy." I went into the dining room, my mother's bedroom, to see what she wanted. PC had done her makeup well this morning. She was even wearing a little blue eyeshadow. I moved over to her chair. "Bend down," she said, and when I did, she kissed my forehead. "Good morning." Her mouth smelled like Ipana toothpaste. "Good morning," I said. "Scratch my left arm, will you? Just above the elbow." Although my mother could not move anything below her neck, she could feel everything. I scratched for her until she said good. Then she said, "Are you making trouble already? Did I hear PC yelling at you?" "No, ma'am." She stared at me, a little smile on her face. My shoulders sagged. Yes, but it was her fault. I backed up to sit at the foot of my mother's unmade bed. Later, I would have to make it, and God forbid there be a wrinkle anywhere when I was done. PC wanted the sheets pulled so firmly you could flip a coin off them. "Why do they have to be so tight?" I once asked, and PC said, "On account I said so, first and foremost. Nextly, it looked nice." She sniffed in her high and mighty way. "Crazy old fool," I muttered. "What'd you say?" she asked, and I said nothing. "That's right," she said. "That's a sum total, your opinion." This next part is when her mother gets polio. And this is the last section I'll read. Her parents, in the novel, the parents of the unborn baby are going for a picnic. And on that July day, my mother pointed to a grassy bank under cottonwood trees. But before she was halfway through eating her sandwich, she began feeling sick, and she asked to go to the hospital. "Oh, baby, are you sure?" my father asked. They had no insurance, and they'd intended to have a home birth. Over and over, he asked her if she was sure she needed to go to the hospital. She did not answer him. She lay in the back seat of the car feeling worse all the time, and my father drove fast, then faster, back toward Tupelo. By the time they got to a hospital, my mother could no longer walk. She was diagnosed immediately. She remembered the doctor taking one look at her and saying, "This woman has polio," and that she was put into an isolation room. When her breathing failed the next day, she was transferred to a larger facility and put into an iron lung. She talked very little about the time she spent in there. Over the years, I'd learned bits and pieces of information, that there were many iron lungs, all in one large room, and the only privacy was curtains that were sometimes drawn between them. That her iron lung was a mustard yellow color, and her neighbor's a muddy green. That one Christmas Eve, the patients had sung, with difficulty of course, "O Holy Night," and it had made the staff cry. That the sound the bellows made with their rhythmic squeaks and thunks reminded my mother of windshield wipers. That when someone died, the patient's overhead mirrors would be turned so that they couldn't see the now silent lung being pushed past them. That my mother read 3 books at a time from her overhead rack so that the page turner wouldn't be needed so often. That the women patients wore their hair in top knots, necessary because of lying flat in the lung, and the style was called a polio poodle. That a psychiatrist once asked my mother, "How does it feel to realize that your daughter will never know your touch?" To which my mother responded, "How does it feel to be an incompetent asshole?" That a patient once complained of feeling cold, and his caregiver put a blanket over the lung rather than him. That the patient, that's true, that the patients who couldn't talk made giddy-up sounds to call for help, or clicked their teeth together, or made popping sounds with their lips. That there was a ward newspaper to which my mother contributed poems and short stories. She learned in occupational therapy to write with a pen held in her mouth. It took an hour and 45 minutes for her to write 1 page. I asked once if people ever cried, and she hesitated, then said yes. "Did you?" I asked, and she said yes, but rarely, and only once had she cried hard, and for a long time. It happened after she overheard a conversation between a doctor and a patient a few lungs down from her. The patient, whose name was Sam, asked, "So when will I go home, Doc? I want to drive my new car. I got a new convertible 2 days before I came in here." The doctor asked for a chair and pulled it up so Sam could see him eye to eye. Then he said, "I'm sorry, but I have to tell you that you won't be able to walk again or even breathe on your own." There was a long silence, and then Sam said, "What do you mean?" The doctor told him again, saying that the time for recovery had passed. Sam said, "Well, you're wrong. I'll drive to your house, and when I get there, I'll take you out for a ride." "I hope you will," the doctor said. "But Sam, I want you to start thinking about what it will mean if you can't." It was the night after that incident that my mother had sobbed, at least to the extent that she was able. She said it was more like high-pitched squeals, really, and that had frustrated her as much as anything, that she couldn't even really have a good cry. But when she had finished crying, she decided that if this was her fate, she would use what she had left. "I could still taste and smell and hear and see," she said. "I could still learn, and I could still teach. I could still love and be loved. I had my mind and my spirit, and I had you." Okay, well, let's have some questions. Nothing hard, please. Nothing difficult. It's been very busy at my house lately. Haven't been sleeping well. Any questions? It's always hard to be the first, I know. Oh, a brave soul.
How did the voice of PC come to you, or did she come right away with that great visual at the same time? She has very
How did the voice of PC come? Yeah, she came as a fully realized character. That doesn't always happen. Usually when I write, characters are like those old Polaroid pictures. They're pretty blurry at first, pretty vague, and then they come up and become clear. But she was fully realized from the moment she appeared. Yeah, I wish she would live with me, but unfortunately she's not real.
Hi.
Hi.
I wondered when you chose Tupelo, Mississippi, knowing that it was Elvis's birthplace, if it was going to turn out that way. Or did that thought come to you as you went through the book, as you were writing?
No, I didn't plan on that, as I don't usually plan on anything in my books anyway. But yeah, that was a surprise to me. I said, well, will you look at that? I cannot believe this. Yeah, it was a nice moment for me. I said, yay! Yeah. There's a question in the back.
I have a nice loud voice. Have you had feedback from other families who had someone in an iron lung and was able to carry on a family life?
No. Have I had feedback from families in who also knew someone or had a relative in an iron lung? No. A couple of letters that referred to polio and people who had recovered from polio pretty well or had residual, just a little bit of damage. But no. And it was, I knew almost nothing about iron lungs, even though I was a nurse for 10 years. They are no longer around. So it was both heartbreaking and interesting to learn about that way of life. There's a question here.
My book club had wanted me to ask about the love interest and if the real woman had had something similar like that happen, or why you added that to what was in the story.
There's she's asking about the love interest in the book and asking if the real mother had anything like that. Well, that's a good question, because the real mother, as you know, had 3 children, not 1. She remarried. It was a guy who did a lot of work around the house for them, a handyman. He was not a good man. She remarried, she got pregnant again, and the baby was stillborn. And Marianne told me that she was glad that the baby was stillborn, because this man was just awful to those kids. He was awful, awful, awful. And she asked her mother when she was older, why did you marry him? And her mother, heartbreakingly, replied, who else would have me? So, yeah. So I gave her a good guy. Really cute, too.
I'm interested about your process, the way you said that as a child you were very, you do a lot in your head. And then it seems like your ideas come when you're sleeping or in the shower. Do you have any way to...
Or driving, another personal favorite.
So yeah. Can you increase this? Do you do a meditation, or how do you get your ideas or development?
Do I increase those times of productivity in some conscious way? The answer most succinctly is no. I'm such an easy boss. I let these books do whatever they want, including take a day off. And it may not be on a day when I would like to take a day off, but it wants to take a day off. So there's no arguing. They always win. The books always win. So for me, and I just want to stress that every writer is different. And if there's anything that a writer needs most to do, it's honor his or her own ways and processes. People always ask a lot of questions. What's your process? Do you use a laptop? Do you write by hand? Do you smoke dope before you write? I mean, it's just all these questions as though, oh, okay, I've got the formula. Like, I drink some tea and then I go up to my study and, oh yes, note to self, paint my study white. There's no formula. It's like falling in love. You can't explain it. It's kind of magical, and may it always be that way. It's a mood. It's like a ghost. It shows up, and I milk it for all it's worth, and then it goes away. And I think that inside all of us is this vast reservoir of wisdom and feeling and capability, and that we don't tap into very much of it. I think a lot of us don't use all of ourselves, and I include myself in that. But there's a lot there. And so it becomes a matter of trust, of believing that if you get out of the way, it will get the job done. That's how I work. And that said, I am predisposed to being a very dreamy and dramatic personality. When I was a little kid, my parents called me Sarah, after Sarah Bernhardt, the actress, the great dramatic, tragic actress. And here was my idea of a good time. First of all, I had a quality necessary for writers in that I liked being alone a lot. If you want to be a writer, you better like being alone a lot. Well, I liked it. My mother brought a friend over for me one day because I spent so much time alone. She imported a friend. The little girl, came down into my playroom, and I looked at her and said, "Go home." And my mother was furious and embarrassed, as well she should have been, and the girl went home, and that was that. Vastly relieved, I returned to my job of playing with my kaleidoscope. I also liked this game, which I made up, which I thought was brilliant. And I guess I was 5 or 6, so here's the game. Go outside and stand by the side of the road and look for cars. Carefully, left, right. Then go out in the middle of the road and lie down. When the car gets as close as you can stand it, get up and run to the side. It was such a good game, so close to death, and yet escaping it, so close to death, and yet escaping it. It was wonderful. Until one of the cars was my mother's, and then she wailed on me, and I never did it again. You probably do well as a writer if you're a little odd. You get to use it. It's okay. Anyway, that's a long answer too.
You are absolutely delightful. I'd like to know how you hit upon the title.
We are all welcome here. I just wanted to have a title that would speak to that very notion, that this planet doesn't belong to any one particular kind of person or living being, that everything on this planet belongs here and is in that respect welcome. And these artificial barriers and boundaries and the prejudice that we have toward people who are not like us and so on, and isn't it looming large in our lives today, by the way. I wanted to speak against that by making a statement. We are all welcome here.
Did you ever entertain any alternative titles?
Probably. Did I talk about that once and I forgot? Is this a test? I probably did, because I don't always just have a title right away. In fact, want me to tell you my horrifying title story? Yes. When I wrote a novel called Talk Before Sleep, I could not find a title for that book. I just didn't know what to call it. So I was casting about, coming up with this, coming up with that, and I was calling my best friend Phyllis all the time, and she's very good with this kind of thing, and I was running titles past her. And I called her one day and I said, oh, I've got the title. She wasn't home, so I left a message. I said, I've got the title. It's The Relief of Passing Breezes. And I said, I thought it was beautiful. And I said, you don't have to call me back unless you don't like it. So she called me back. And she said, The Relief of Passing Breezes, or Fart, by Elizabeth Berg. So sometimes I struggle. But if I did have an alternative title for this, I don't recall it. It was not a strong contender. Yeah. Did it bother you, the title? It's okay if it did. See me after class. No, I'm always interested, because I think this is a difficult title for some people it mystifies me that people don't know what it means, because it says exactly what it means. But I think people are predisposed to looking at a title and thinking that it stands for something else. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But now I'm okay.
Okay. I could always slap a new title on it, and people with memories like mine would say, "Oh, a new Berg book," and happily read it.
Why do you think Nashua picked your book?
Who's talking? Oh, that was so weird. Hi. Why do I think that you picked this book? I don't know, but I am so gratified, honestly, because, most of the books I write are not one city, one book worthy, I mean, I still have a hard time saying I'm a writer. I've written 22 books, and when people say, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm a writer." It's still hard for me to do it. So this has happened twice now that a title of mine has been chosen. Interestingly, the other book was also historical fiction, which I don't usually write. But that said, all that self-esteem business put aside, I think it might have been chosen because there's a lot to talk about. There are a lot of the issues that are in this book that persist in our present lives. I think it's interesting to talk about whether or not Paige Dunn should have kept her child, or the real mother, Marianne Berg, should have kept those 3 children. Was it a disservice to them? Was she a, quote, bad mother because she was so compromised? Would they have been better off with an able-bodied mother? Or did the gifts that she gave them make up for that? Was she, in fact, a better mother? I know a lot of book clubs have read this book and talked about that very thing, so maybe that's why. Plus, it has a nice cover. It's got a tea kettle on it.
Hi. I've got to say, I love the dynamics between the 2 girlfriends. And also, because I grew up during that time, and the big deal about the 17 magazine and the Glamour College issue, it was just, we waited for the end of the summer to get that. And also, I really loved the pretty woman scene in the clothing store, where the shopkeeper did not want them trying on the hats. So I really felt like he keyed in on a certain particular era for a young teenage girl.
Thank you. Yeah, that talking about the 17 magazine that came out in the fall, and it was always a big fat one, and we would all look at that and want to be that one particular model, that really cute one with the flip. Well, they all had flips. You're getting a workout there.
I would like to know where you reside, and if you do all your writing there or in another place, special places you write.
Where do I do most of my writing? At home in a converted bedroom. I live just outside of Chicago, the first suburb to the west, and I turned a bedroom into an office. When I lived in Natick, I had a little shed in the backyard, and I loved that because it was so spare and so quiet, and it was all wood in there, and no phones rang, also I wasn't online in those days, so when they email, none of that was happening. That was my favorite place to write, in that shed, but alas, I no longer have that.
How did you decide to have Paige bite Diana as the disciplinary act?
Paige, how did I decide that? That was a true thing. And Marianne said that her mother's will was so strong, and she had a look that could kill. And when she said, "Get over here and give me your finger," she said, "It didn't even occur to me not to do it. I mean, what was she going to do? Chase her around? You know, she couldn't move. But she would go over and give her finger, always the pointer. She would give her finger, her mother would bite it, and then her mother, who was interested in nursing and knew some things, would say, go wash it out, put a Band-Aid on it. And she said sometimes when she went to school, her finger would hurt because, you know, it was her pointer finger. But a friend of Pat Raming's had said, you are going to have to come up with a way to discipline these kids or they're going to run all over you. And that's what she came up with. She didn't usually bite her that hard, but sometimes she did.
Are boys allowed to ask questions?
Oh, not only are you allowed to ask questions, there's going to be beer all around for all the guys who came here. Those brave men, yes.
I listened to the audio version and enjoyed it very much. Is that quite a common thing today for people to listen to the audio version more so than reading it?
Are the audios more common than reading books? They're becoming bigger and bigger as it happens, as are ebooks becoming bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One more question. I'm telling you, they take such good care of you here from the time, forever. I mean, making plans to come here, being picked up at the airport, being brought to the hotel, being taken out to dinner to this swell restaurant, to having a sign with large print that I can see that says, one more question. This is,
I wanted to ask you a medical question. How was Paige able to stay for 3 years in the iron lung and then go home? I was just surprised that she would go home after being that long in the iron lung.
my understanding is that a resolution from polio can take a really long time. In the scene I read you where the guy is told the time of recovery has passed, you're not going to get any better. I assume that's what happened with her, and she was able to progress to having the portable ventilator and frog breathing. So I'm not sure how that would have compared with someone like the character Sam in the novel. But they do, it takes a long time to determine whether or not someone's going to get better. So are you asking why didn't she go home sooner, given that nothing changed in...
No, I think I just wanted to know if realistically, if that really did happen, if she was 3 years in the iron lung and then she went home.
Oh, that really did happen, yes. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, I guess there are, is there a question that someone's just going to die if they don't ask? There might be. Okay, we'll just do that. Now, no pressure.
I was very disturbed by the restaurant scene. And then I was also disturbed by the man who made love to her but then left and said, I was just trying to make her happy.
Yeah.
It's disturbed by those two things.
Yeah, I wanted you to be disturbed by those things. Yeah, yeah. I wanted you to get mad. Okay. All right. On that note, thank you again so very much for coming out. I'm deeply honored, truly. Thank you.